Hello, I'm Eric Topol, Editor-in-Chief of Medscape, and I'm really fortunate today to have who I consider a legend in medicine, Desmond Hellman, who has a multi-dimensional career we're going to get into, currently the CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I know not so far from here in Nevada, you were born, large family of 7 kids, a pharmacist and an English teacher, parents, and I guess you had your education at University of Nevada before you left after med school to Berkeley. Is that right? So you finally beached into the Bay Area?
I got into the Bay Area. Actually, here's the thing. I grew up in Reno, Nevada, but my dad is a San Francisco native, and I was born in Napa. Unusually. That's very rare because it was a tiny town back then.
Yeah.
But when there were 3 kids in our family, my dad packed up and moved to open up a family-owned pharmacy with his partner in Reno, back in the boom days of Reno, Nevada. So in many ways, when I came back to UC San Francisco, where I did my residency, chief residency and fellowship, I lived down the street for a while, down the street from my grandma. So yeah, no, I'm a California native, but I consider Reno my home still.
Okay, well, your roots are here.
My roots are here.
What's amazing is some things that happened early in your career, as you mentioned, UCSF in medicine and oncology, and of course the Berkeley public health training. You then went, after I guess the training, to Uganda for a couple of years, right?
I did. In fact, unusually, and I think people forget about the HIV epidemic. So as a reminder, people talked about 3 H's back in the days, initially called it gay-related immune deficiency, or GRID,
well.
you remember? So the 3 H's were homosexuals, hemophiliacs, and Haitians, of all things. It just shows you how incorrect we were about our understanding of HIV. And in the late 80s, there became some rumblings. And the rumblings were that HIV was hitting sub-Saharan Africa and that it was being transmitted through heterosexual sex. And back then, people didn't believe that. They actually believed that it was so unacceptable to be gay in sub-Saharan Africa that people were fibbing. And so news of this came back to the Rockefeller Foundation. And the Rockefeller Foundation called up people you and I know, Merle Sandy.
Oh, yeah.
Dick Root.
Yeah.
Merle Sandy and Dick Root, neither of whom are with us today. Actually, they've both passed on.
Right.
They were the principal investigators of a Rockefeller-funded grant to study heterosexual transmission of HIV in Uganda. And UCSF loaned 2 of its young faculty members at the time to oversee this grant and work in Kampala, Uganda. Before global health, before any of that existed, and those 2 young faculty members were me, and I trained in oncology and HIV. My specialty was Kaposi sarcoma, and my husband, Nick Hellman, who is an infectious disease doctor.
And then you went to the life science industry with Bristol Myers?
I did. I went to Bristol Myers Squibb in their oncology division at the time, and they had this little drug that had just been approved for ovarian cancer called Taxol.
A little drug.
And then it was a little drug. It had 1 indication for use in advanced ovarian cancer, and the company was about to embark on 2 very critical approvals based on a big phase 3 trial. An approval of Taxol for use in breast cancer in the United States and the approval in Europe. And so they were very busy and could use an extra pair of hands, so I became the drug safety person on Taxol.
Amazing.
I think they thought I couldn't do too much damage doing drug safety.
Well, knowing you, it's just the opposite. But then you went on to a very remarkable phase in your career, 14 years at Genentech,
Yes.
right? And you were looking after Avastin and Herceptin and all these, the first real personalized drugs of medicine today, right?
Yes, when I moved from Bristol Myers Squibb to Genentech, Genentech had no cancer drugs, but Art Levinson, who was the head of R&D when I was recruited, outlined a dream for me that I was moved by. So even though I was by then the project team leader for the Taxol team at Bristol Myers Squibb, and it was the company's #1 seller, and Bristol Myers Squibb was doing great, Art's science vision, his sense that all of the research at Genentech could translate into doing something powerful captivated me. So now I know that I probably took a one-level demotion, but I didn't pay any attention to that. I didn't really understand things like that, but I didn't think about that and came to Genentech. And so I came in '95. Genentech did the deal with IDEC on Rituxan soon thereafter. So I was able to participate and then eventually lead the product development for Rituxan, Herceptin, Tarceva, and Avastin during the time I was at Genentech, and Lucentis in eye disease.
Talk about the changing landscape of interventions.
It was
wow.
An amazing, fantastic experience with all of my colleagues that I still look back on fondly.
Now, the most surprising thing for many was this going the other way. Here you were, this is kind of interesting in retrospect, they wouldn't take you back to UCSF, and now you're invited to be the chancellor of UCSF.
Yeah.
What was that like?
In coming into the university, it was 2009. It was right on the heels of a terrible recession. UCSF's a public university, and so when I started, I felt so underwater. First of all, I didn't know as much about academia as I wished I knew about how things really work. And so I had a steep learning curve, and we lacked money and resources. And so I needed to focus on right away scrambling to make sure that we were going to be okay financially, and working with the academic medical center and all of the programs to make sure that we weren't losing faculty or losing our excellence as a result of these fiscal constraints. So I felt like the thing that I wanted to say in leaving the university when I left in 2014 was that I left it a better place.
Oh,
and I feel very confident it's a better place.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so now you get the call from Bill and Melinda, and they say we want to get you to come and run the Gates Foundation. Was that something that you were thinking of ever doing, going back to this kind of Uganda-like global health mission?
That was not the plan in any way. It was not on the life plan. It wasn't on the career plan. But there was a couple of things that made a big difference. So there's something deeply profound about what Bill and Melinda are trying to accomplish with their foundation and Warren Buffett's support. And that's in the end why I made the decision to leave UCSF, which I have to tell you was excruciating.
It must have been.
It was gut-wrenching. In fact, I was driving both Bill and Melinda and myself crazy over this. It was a long discussion and a hard decision because I love UCSF and I was and am passionate about the work, but they are deeply serious about inequity, and they have a way of taking this vision, which is all lives have equal value, and profoundly trying to make that real. That no matter where you're born, who your mom and dad are, what your conditions of coming into the world are, that you should have a chance to have a healthy and productive life. So what does that mean? Well, in the United States, that means supporting education. And education has, for a long time, been in the U.S. the great equalizer, the way that you were born with little and have every opportunity in the world. And so education is our focus as a foundation in the U.S. Outside of the U.S., it's health, and global health is extremely important to the foundation, and that's some of what I wrote about in the letter. Increasingly, though, it's beyond health, so we support agriculture outside the U.S. because we'd like to help smallholder farmers be more productive. So the farmer can feed his or her family and maybe make some money. So agriculture is very important. We also invest in mobile money, and we invest in water, sanitation, and hygiene. We're known for our toilet fairs and innovation on toilets and sewers.
Watching a video of Bill drinking the water
drinking
from
poop
the toilet.
water on Jimmy Fallon. That's had a lot of views. But all these have in common everyone having a chance at a healthy and productive life.
Well, and you're making what I would consider pretty remarkable headway in a short period of time. Right? There's no polio in Africa, and it's only, in Pakistan and Afghanistan now or something?
Progress is being made. And actually, I think there's a couple things that the global health community has really changed since my days in Uganda. And I think they're worth celebrating. The big celebration should be that fewer people in the world are poor in a magnificent way. I mean, it's just, and in 2015, Bill and Melinda put out a series of big bets. They sent out a letter in early 2015.
Oh, I remember that.
And their biggest bet was that they bet that by 2030, that the progress in the next 15 years would lift more people out of poverty than at any other time in human history. That's pretty profound.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that is going out there, but they're optimistic about that because we're making so much progress. So polio is a good example. When I joined the foundation had just committed that Nigeria, Pakistan, and Afghanistan were the 3 difficult countries in the world where wild polio, endemic polio, still existed. And that together with our partners at WHO, UNICEF, Rotary, PATH, we would basically have a surge in Nigeria. Now, when we think about a surge, we think about military things. But this was a
surge.
Vaccination health surge. And that if Africa, the continent, could be wild polio free, then the world could turn its attention to Pakistan and Afghanistan. And in fact, now we're 21 months polio-free in both Nigeria and the continent of Africa, free of wild polio. Now, no one's celebrating. We're still deeply concerned about coverage and vaccination in the continent of Africa, and nobody's taking their eye off that because the way polio works is you get certified as polio-free 3 years by WHO. So not time for a celebration yet. No. But that success in Nigeria allowed us to focus on Pakistan and Afghanistan. So as of about 2 weeks ago, there had been 14 cases in the world this year. So we are literally endgame on polio.
That's really impressive.
And I love medical history, so I will tell you that the only human disease that's ever been eradicated in the world is smallpox. And that was 1979.
That was the last one.
That was the last one and the only one. So
and the only one.
This is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, what I love about this is you're thinking about planetary health. You know, most of us are happy to just make a little bit of a difference. You're doing some really big stuff.
It's good to be ambitious. I think that's good.
Yeah. No, I think it's phenomenal. So besides that, what you're doing at a global scale, you also have other interesting connects, no shortage of stimulation. So I know you've worked with Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg on the Facebook board. So you have the techie, no less the. So what's it like to do that, to be right in the midst of one is the most impactful, by the way, the largest community of people by far in the world, 1.65 billion active users. What is it like to be part of that network?
As chancellor, I started learning much more about an obstacle to great health. And as an oncologist, I always knew that tobacco, that controlling tobacco was one of the single most powerful things anyone could do. You know, it's the only thing on earth that kills half of its users when used as directed. That's a pretty profound thing. But if you start to look at diabetes, heart disease, cancer, one of the key success factors is behavior change.
Sure.
And we're not very good at behavior change.
Abysmal.
So, terrible. So I read a paper about the network effect and behavior change. And the paper described that if your friends smoke, you smoke.
Oh,
if
this
your friends,
is the Christakis and Fowler's work.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
And I became fascinated about my need to learn more about the network effect in a good way. So I thought, well, gee, my husband's really a big cyclist. He's eating a healthy diet. I'm a big cyclist. I'm eating a healthy diet. Our friends do that. So this network effect felt to me, it resonated for me. It was really powerful. I think I used to call it peer pressure, but I wondered if that could scale from a medical and health perspective. So ironically, my public health way of thinking led me to be interested in learning about the social network and Facebook.
Natural.
So when Mark invited me to be on the board, I signed up 3 years ago now, and I am profoundly interested in how people connect, how people share, and how people connect, and and how that could contribute in a positive way to the human condition.
You know, it's really interesting you bring this up, because in meeting with both Mark and Cheryl at different times, I've just tried to beg them to harness this power.
Yeah.
Because, for example, when they did that for transplant, for people to donate
Absolutely.
their organs, this profound impact.
Yeah.
And if they start to do that more, of the tech titans, Google and Apple and IBM, Microsoft, they're the ones that haven't taken their power forward enough for health.
Well, here's a great story. So, Kathy Giusti, who
Yes,
runs the Multiple
sure.
Myeloma Research Foundation. Kathy talked to me at one point, this a few years back, but it was a story that I've never forgotten. So there's been a lot of advances in myeloma. Things in multiple myeloma are better than they were.
No question.
But there was a group of patients that had a genetic variant of myeloma that affected about 15% of all myeloma patients. And there was no remedy for them, and that's a small market, right? So this group of patients learned about each other by connecting through the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation Facebook site.
Yeah.
And so they all, were connected and talking. That group of patients, this is after I left Genentech, that group of patients went to Genentech and other biotech companies, and they made a value proposition. And the value proposition was, look, we're all connected through Facebook. If you make a targeted therapy for this variant of multiple myeloma, you have a clinical trial that you could enroll in 1 hour. At least a day, depending on how often we're on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. No, it's true.
So even though you might not make as much money as if you did lung cancer or a, quote, big market, if you did a targeted clinical trial, we're ready.
Oh, yeah.
We're already
Absolutely.
here. And when I heard that story, I thought, like you, think of the power of being able to do precision medicine in such a profound way. And so I think that this connection, this ability to connect people, the impact on your behavior and that network effect in a positive way, I feel like we're at the tip of the iceberg of that right now.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen so many rare, novel diseases where we've been able to go from 1 to 10 and 20 through Facebook.
Well, and you look at an example of something like chronic myelogenous leukemia and Gleevec. It started small.
Oh, yeah.
And then we thought that GIST, this stomach cancer, was rare. And come to find out, if you start to look, you will find, we did that with Rituxan, many more lymphoma patients were being treated with watch and wait. And so this thinking about moving from a disease by body part to moving from disease by target is transformational.
No question. Well, speaking of transformational, you fit into that category. I don't know anyone else who has done all these different things in a career, and you still are going. You got plenty more. Are there any further chapters you're envisioning in this extraordinary arc of your career?
So here's the thing I'm passionate about now. I'm all in at the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation. I am learning so much. I'm so moved by the work, and I'm so passionate that we make a difference in the world. And one of the things that I'm mad about is that problems that affect the world's poorest are underserved. That just shouldn't be the case. And that's what led Bill and Melinda down this path. They couldn't imagine that preventable diseases like measles, mumps, that kids would go without a vaccine anywhere in the world, because these are cheap vaccines that prevent diseases.
Yeah.
So that same sense of fairness and equity has me thinking about something that I've spent more time on, particularly in the last 6 to 12 months. And that is the world that you and I were trained in now has dramatically changed. So people who care about innovation in medicine have ubiquitous smartphones. They have self-monitoring. They have low-cost sequencing. They have electronic health records. And they have big data.
Yep.
All rich people have tons of folks working on how to improve health using all those tools. And then I see people who are public health and global health experts, and they may be in Ethiopia or northern Nigeria or India. And a minister of health is thinking, okay, here are my tiny number of resources. Here are my frontline healthcare workers. How am I going to deliver something to mom, to babies, to decrease suffering and, first of all, prevent preventable deaths? But how can I innovate? What's there for me? And so I started pushing myself to ask a question: how could you bring those two worlds together? This world of wonderful need and spirit in public and global health, and this world of technocrats, so to speak, who are innovating. How do I merge those two worlds? So I've started talking about precision public health. And the way that I think about precision public health is going from N=1, right therapy for the right patient at the right time, to 1 of N, like a population health person would think of. This community, this population, this subpopulation needs a package of interventions, and the public health department, the Ministry of Health, is thinking about interventions at a community and population level. So you have the right set of interventions for the right population in the right geography. A pretty big move from one to the other, but for me right now, about as inspiring as anything I've spent time on.
Well, that really cuts across this kind of population health to this really highly intelligent solution. I really look forward to seeing your TED Talk on this topic, which is going to get posted soon, because you've given some really deep thought and some great ideas on that. So I must say, it's just I use the term legendary, not loosely.
That makes me nervous. I feel old when you say that.
I know, I feel old too. But I just don't know anybody who's done so many different things and who's still rocking it. And I just congratulate you on this career, and what you're doing with the Gates Foundation is so much bigger than what we're just talking about in this country. So thanks for joining us from Medscape.
Thank you.
If anybody fulfills one of the most interesting people in medicine and healthcare, it's got to be you, Sue. And thanks to all of you for joining us for this really fun conversation with Sue Desmond-Hellman. And we'll be back with some other really fascinating people in medicine.